Right, well, welcome back, troops. Now I'll tell you straight from the off, this video is not going to be everybody's cup of tea because it may get a little technical. But as you know, me and the dog, we occasionally go out picking up litter. We find all sorts. Quite a lot of it is useful. One thing I've been finding over the past, well, few years now, but collecting over the past few weeks is these. I don't know whether you can see, I'll bring you in closer, but these are e-cigarettes or vapes. Lots of them, different sizes. And I find so many of them that I've looked into how they're powered, and they have inside them a lithium cell, 3.7 volts, which is rechargeable. It's rechargeable up to 300 times, yet these things are used once and thrown away. So my thinking is, can we use these batteries? Can we safely disassemble, extract the battery and recharge the battery and use it? So that's what I've been experimenting with the last few days. Well, researching over the last few days, really. I'm really just at the point to experiment now. So, for those of you, and I know this isn't everybody's cup of tea, and you know, it's not really bushcraft, but it's the bushcraft mentality. Taking what you've got and using it to your advantage. So I'll start then by bringing you in closer and just taking one of these vapes to pieces. We'll just see what it consists of and how we get the battery out. Now, first of all, you'll notice I'm wearing gloves because in these vapes are chemicals, and one of those chemicals is a nicotine salt, which can presumably be absorbed through the skin. So I don't really want to get addicted to or overdosed with nicotine. Right, so you see, the e-cigarettes or the vapes here are of different sizes, and what I want really, where I can get it, is a bigger battery rather than a smaller battery. So these smaller batteries are in, say, these size vapes, and the bigger batteries are in, say, these size vapes. So we'll take this one to pieces, and I'll just show you where the battery is. So there's the mouthpiece that the person would inhale from, and it draws air through a fairly small opening there, so there is some resistance. So we can take, hopefully, he says, they do come to pieces fairly easily, so we just get a knife and wiggle it about a bit, wiggle it about, and that mouthpiece is just in there by friction, held in by friction. It should come off. The mouthpiece will come completely off. So there we've got the mouthpiece there. Now we want to take the bottom off. Same again with the bottom, knife in, wiggle it about a bit. Just be careful with the knife applying too much pressure with a sharp knife and having an accident. Now this isn't going to come completely off, and I'll show you why. It's going to have some wires fixed to it, I think. We're getting there. I don't want to force this off too much because I don't want to break wires inside. I don't want these lithium cells have a lot of power in them, so if things go wrong and you short some wires out, There we go. See the wires connected in the bottom there. So what I like to do when I'm taking them to pieces is have a tin can handy, just in case you short some wires out and it goes up in flames. Have another tin can handy for your rubbish as well. Right, so once you've got that far, you can see there's a little disc in the bottom there with 3 wires on it, a black, a red and a blue, and that's onto the sensor which senses when somebody is drawing on this mouthpiece, and it can switch the heater on to form the cloud of vapour. But what we want to do now is take a pencil or something, a pencil here, and just push the whole contents out. There we go, push the whole contents out. So now we're left with an empty tube, and the empty tube can go in the metal recycling. The plastic, well, let's just keep it here for the minute. Let's just keep it here for the minute, just to remind ourselves where everything was. So we've got the mouthpiece, we've got a section here of sort of wadding which has the chemical in it. In the inside of that wadding is a electric heater. Take that piece of plastic off there. There's a piece of protective material around the heater, and then in there there's a heater, and in there there's a lot of wadding with the chemical around it. And then we've got the battery, the lithium battery. Now I believe these are lithium ion batteries. I've done some research, and my research suggests but not absolutely confirms that these are lithium ion batteries. They could be lithium polymer, but I believe they're lithium ion. So 2 batteries, 2 terminals up to the heater, and then 3 down to this little tiny sensor here, which we're not really interested in. What we're interested in is the battery. So I'm just going to snip, first of all, the wires to the heater. Snip, snip, and now I'm going to take off the wires that go to the sensor, and I'm going to just snip them off one at a time so I don't short the battery out. Although now I've snipped the red, it doesn't right, so now we've got the battery out, and it's got some writing on the battery, and it's got IP20400. Now the 20400 is the dimensions of the battery, approximately 2 centimeters in diameter and approximately 4 centimeters long. Then it's got the voltage, 3.7 volts. Then it's got TS, some stars and TS, I don't know what that means. Then it's got 1500 mAh, which is capacity. That's 1500 milliamp hours. Total capacity of 5.55 watt hours. Then it's got a little minus symbol. Then 2022-06-12, which I guess is the date it was manufactured. 2022, and depending whether that's the American way round or the British way round, that would be the month and then the days of the month. And then a little plus. And what that minus and that plus tell you, as well as the black end and the red end, is the negative is black and the positive is red end of the battery. We can confirm this in a minute with the multimeter. I'm just going to pull out that blue wire, that's no longer connected to anything, put that in the rubbish. Let's put the chemicals in the rubbish. Mouthpiece, cover. That little thing in the bottom that looks like a little microphone, it is a pressure sensor, and it may have some other electronics in it to shut the battery off completely when it gets too flat. And if this was a rechargeable one, as some are, it has some protection circuit in it as well to make sure the battery isn't overcharged, but in this case it'll probably not have that in it. Anyway, as far as we're concerned, this is rubbish, and that can go in the metal recycling. So now all we're left with is the battery, and we can at this stage check if the battery has any voltage in it. If we strip this red and this black wire, if I take the insulation off it, you can do it with a knife very delicately, or you can do it with scissors very delicately. Now don't let these wires come together. We'll just see if there's any voltage in this battery. It's very low voltage, but it'd be high current if the wires touch together, so we're not going to get a shock or anything, but we could get burned. And there's 3.6 volts in there, 3.61 volts. So that battery is very healthy. Fully charged it would be between 3.7 and 4.2 volts. Right, so we found out that there's quite a charge still in this battery, and one thing I want it for is illumination. And while litter picking in the woods, I found a smashed torch, and this is the head unit of the torch, and this torch would initially have had two of these batteries in it, 1.5 volt D cells. Well, two 1.5 volt cells equals 3 volts, which is pretty much what this is. So if we connect this to this cell, I'm expecting that light to light. I'm just holding the wires on, so hopefully, and there we go. We can get the torch, and that's quite bright, isn't it? Get the torch working. And this is from this battery being flat, or not flat, but used and discarded. And in fact, I've got another one here which hasn't got quite the voltage in it, but again it's got enough voltage in it to light this torch. Now then, I said these were rechargeable batteries, and ultimately I want to recharge them. Now I've seen some people on the internet just connecting 5 volts across the terminals using USB chargers. But that's a bit dangerous, and that's why these batteries have a bit of a bad reputation, because really you shouldn't charge them above, you shouldn't let them reach more than about 4.2 volts. And if you just keep pumping energy into them, eventually it's going to go, the battery voltage is going to go beyond 4.2 volts, and also you might start generating heat in the battery, and then they could burst into flames. So that's not what we want. So what you can get is a little circuit, and I got 3 of these. I've got the other one here on ready for soldering up, I got 3 of these off of that auction site, and they were way less than £1 each. So these chips, or these boards, there's 2 there and there's 1 here, connected, will enable me to recharge these batteries safely. So that's what I'm going to wire up now. I'm going to wire one of these boards up now. These are the battery terminals I'm soldering on. These go to the battery. Then there's 2 separate terminals that go to the load, which is the torch. So there's 2 main chips on this board. One's called a TP4056, and that regulates the charging of the battery, and the other one's a DW01, which stops the battery from being over discharged. It'll cut off. It's quite delicate soldering these on, and you have to be careful not to connect the negatives together, because I don't think the negatives are common. Right, so that's the 2 battery cables attached, wires, red and black, and I'm going to use orange and green for the load. Then to charge the battery, this board has got a C-type, I believe, USB connector on it there, or you can solder 2 more wires on it and just use any 5-volt input. And 5 volts is becoming very, very standard these days. It's even built into vehicles for charging your 5-volt devices. Now when we've got this all sorted out, I'm just going to initially connect 1 battery in, and it's worth saying as well that 1 battery or 1 what we term as a battery is really known as a cell, and really the correct term for the correct way that a battery is used is when you've got a number of cells connected together. So we're misusing the term, but it's just what everybody's got to come to know. Right, now that's all the terminals we're soldering onto this. The next job is to solder on a battery, and then the thing becomes live. So I don't want these crocodile clips. These crocodile clips aren't insulated. You have to be very careful what you're putting these crocodile clips on as well, because there's some very delicate, there's 2 LEDs on there. It's quite delicate. So we really do want this in some sort of container. Now then, let's just have a look. Oh, look at that. It'll fit inside the metal container that we took it out of, but obviously it needs insulating because this is metal. Now then, this is suitable just for 1 battery on its own, or 2 batteries in parallel, so the negatives are connected together and the positives are connected together. It's no good if you want to get a higher voltage. You need a thing then called a battery management system, which is another circuit, slightly more complicated than this one, but really if you can understand and deal with this one, you can understand and deal with the battery management system. There's just a couple more leads. Each cell will be connected individually. Right, so this is the finished unit then, or the working unit. It's not finished, I need a case to put it in. But we've got the battery connected to the charge unit. We've also got the load, which in our case is the torch, connected to the charge unit through a switch. Switch the load on and off. And I'm charging it at the moment through the USB-C port, and I'm using a battery bank, whereas I could plug it into the USB in the car, or you get them on wall sockets nowadays, or plug it into a computer and that would charge it. Now I do intend putting another battery in parallel so I can still use the same charge unit, because I'm not altering the voltage at all. I'm just going to put another battery in parallel, and that'll power the torch for longer. Right then troops, that about wraps it up. I just want to say, if you do intend doing this sort of thing, watch a few more videos than just mine. I can recommend one site, which is Big Clive. I'll put a link in the description, but there's a lot of videos on people making use of these lithium cells. But be careful what you're doing, and take everything I say with a pinch of salt. But anyway, as far as I'm concerned, that's bright. We've been able to utilise these cells, which is good. It's all this been chucked out, thrown away, and there's plenty of use left in it. So that's, I don't know what the next one's going to be about, but I will be outdoors for the next one. Right, I'll catch you in the next one then.